Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name's KripThirteen, and today we're going to be looking into artifact builds for Kokomi. Now, before we start, I just want to let you guys know that over on Twitch, I did a live breakdown and math comparison of KOKOMI'S damage, so if you're interested in that, then make sure you go and check that out. I also stream variety games over there, and as of today, we're playing Tales of Arise, so if you're interested in that as well, give me a little look-see. Anyway, today we're doing a deep dive into different artifact sets that we can build on our Kokomi. And there are multiple ways that we can build her. We can focus on damage, especially her elemental burst damage, support focusing purely on her jellyfish and hydro application, or we can focus on healing. And I mean just like pure healing. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start very high level, and if you're interested, then stick around and we'll deep dive into the math in order to support what I'm saying. So let's first start off with the main stats. You definitely want to build for HP percent sands, hydro damage bonus goblet, and a healing bonus circlet. Now you can still build different combinations if your subsets are less than ideal, but do know that you are going to be doing less damage, but it's not as bad as dealing like half the amount of damage you would have done otherwise. We'll go into a lot more detail about that later, but really if RNG is really being a huge bother, you can, for example, just run HP percent on your goblet, HP percent on your sands, and healing bonus circlet. Or if you're just having bad luck with getting a healing bonus circlet, you can run HP percent instead. Again, these are not as good as the absolute goal, but they're not terribly worse. So at the end of the day, definitely shoot for HP percent, hydro damage bonus, and healing bonus. The artifact builds that we want to focus on today are the Heart of Depth set, the Maiden set, and the Millelith sets. We can run 4-piece Heart of Depth, 2-piece Heart of Depth, 2-piece Maiden, 2-piece Heart of Depth with the Millelith set, or 2-piece Maiden with 2-piece Millelith. And then of course, if you want to go for a more support role, you can run 4-piece Maiden set for extra healing, or a 4-piece Tenacity of the Millelith in order to provide extra attack percent bonus to the team. And then we also have some niche artifact sets like the 4-piece Wander set that you can go for, or the 4-piece Bolide set. 4-piece Wander if you really just want to use Kokomi's charge attacks, 4-piece Bolide if you're going to be running a shielder with her. And you absolutely do not want to build a 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. Kokomi does not behave like the Raiden Shogun. Her attacks while in burst mode do not count as elemental burst damage like the Shogun, unless something weird happens when she gets released. Nothing official has been said about her damage in this mode being elemental burst, so we need to assume that it's going to act like Xiao and Noelle, where it's classified as just regular, normal, and charge attacks. Okay, so let's first start with the Heart of Depth set. The 4-piece Heart of Depth set is currently her best in slot DPS artifact build, and this makes a lot of sense because we get a global 15% extra hydro damage bonus, as well as a 30% boost to our normal and charge attacks after using an E skill. Everything we do as Kokomi is hydro damage, so that's pretty much a given plus. Our normal and charge attacks are a huge part of our gameplay because our E skill is a fire and forget kind of skill. Press the button and hope that the positioning is good and that it's going to hit the enemies. Being a catalyst user with a very short combo string also means we'll be completing her combo very fast. With the 10 seconds that we have in our burst, most of her damage is going to be coming from her normal and charged attacks. It's going to be much stronger than our jellyfish because we're going to be using them in quicker intervals than the jellyfish, which happens about once every 2-ish seconds. And the scaling on our normal and charged attacks is also just better than the jellyfish. So combining both speed and scaling, it's very clear that our normal and charged attacks is going to be a bigger source of damage than our jellyfish. The 4-piece Heart of Depth set kind of makes our jellyfish refresh passive redundant, but allow me to explain. If you're unfamiliar with Kokomi's kit, then I definitely recommend you to watch my talents breakdown video. Check the description and I'll put a card somewhere on the screen. But anyway, for the 4-piece Heart of Depth to work properly, you need to use your E skill almost immediately before you use your elemental burst. The set bonus is going to last you 15 seconds and your burst lasts 10 seconds, so the overlap definitely fits pretty well. What you can do is pop your E skill, then use your other character skills and then switch back into Kokomi and pop your elemental burst. As long as that rotation for your other characters is less than 5 seconds, you'll get the bonus from the 4-piece set. What this means is that the refresh passive on our jellyfish is still going to work, but you only refresh about 5-ish seconds instead of maximizing it, which if you do maximize it, you refresh 11 to 12 seconds of it. So that's totally up to you whether you think that's good or not, but utilizing the Heart of Depth to its full potential means that you don't utilize the full maximum refresh of her passive skill. The next build that comes close is the 2-piece Heart of Depth with the 2-piece Maiden set. This build is kind of like the equivalent as a damage bonus and attack percent build that you would build on most other characters, and this is going to be the second best build in terms of damage, but it's barely second place. The third build is just so slightly behind. I should clarify that the 2-piece Maiden set does in fact provide 15% healing bonus, even though its description says it gives 15% healing effectiveness. We can very quickly equip the 2-piece set and head over to the character status screen, and we'll see that it is reflected that we get an extra 15% healing bonus. The Heart of Depth and the healing bonus provide damage bonuses, so what's happening here is that the 2-piece Heart of Depth and the healing bonus is providing us extra damage. The Heart of Depth ends up being slightly better than the Millelith's extra 20% HP, and this is true even if your Kokomi is either level 80 out of 80 or level 80 out of 90. It might switch if you go up to 90-90, but if it does, it's going to be so slight that your substats is what's going to be making the absolute difference, and that's pretty much true at all levels. So the third set that's best in terms of damage is the Millelith and Maiden set, and it's barely third place. It's just very slightly behind the Heart of Depth and Maiden build. This one is going to give you an extra 20% HP instead of the 15% hydro damage bonus, and there's pretty much not much to say here. The thinking and explanation is pretty much the same as the Heart of Depth and Maiden build. The extra HP ends up giving us more damage bonus while we're in our burst mode. This set will also give you slightly more healing because of the extra HP. And then the fourth build here in terms of damage is the 2-piece Heart of Depth set with the 2-piece Millelith set. We exchange that healing bonus for either 15% hydro damage or 20% extra HP. So what this shows us is that healing bonus is pretty big in terms of KOKOMI'S damage output, and why you definitely want to build for healing bonus on your circlet. Now with this set, your non-burst damage is actually going to be higher, but if you're going for damage with Kokomi, you don't really care about your non-burst damage, so it's pretty irrelevant. And then like I mentioned before, her support type builds are the 4-piece Millelith set or the 4-piece Maiden set. The choice that you make here is honestly going to depend on the type of content that you're tackling. If you need damage, then go for the 4-piece Millelith set, but if you need survivability, then go for the extra healing. Right now there isn't too much content that requires survivability, but who knows, in the next update the Spiral Abyss could make healing almost necessary. Alright, now is the math section to show you guys that I'm not making this stuff up. And in order to understand this math section, you need to understand how I did the calculations. So firstly, I used a level 80 Kokomi with talent level 8 scaling, as well as I did it the same for a level 80 Kokomi when she's ascended to the final ascension phase. I'm also using the same weapon in all of these artifact comparisons, so I'm using a prototype Amber. That prototype Amber is also fully max leveled. And then of course there are substats, because you're always going to have some amount of substats on your artifacts, and what I did here is that I'm using 3 rolls of attack percent, 6 rolls of HP percent, and 6 rolls of flat HP. Those are definitely the artifact sets you want to try to build for, and these are the ones that are directly going to affect your damage. Energy recharge is also a really good substat to build for her to make sure that you have your elemental burst when you want it and when you need it. These calculations also take into account the ascension bonus, the hydro damage bonus that she gets from leveling up, as well as I'm doing these calculations against enemies that are level 90 and have a 10% res to hydro, or just elements in general. So basically we're hitting a hilichurl with these calculations. What this does is this gives you accurate damage calculations that you would actually see in the game. I've shown an example of me plugging in this information into my math and spreadsheets, so if you're interested in that, you're gonna have to dig for that video. I don't remember exactly which one it was. I believe it was the Ayaka Black Sword breakdown, so look that up if you're looking for that proof. Alright, so let's first start with running different kinds of main stats on Kokomi, and you can see that I plotted 4 types of builds. The first one being the optimal build with HP percent and hydro damage bonus, the next one being attack percent and hydro damage bonus, the next one being HP percent, and then the next one being attack percent and HP percent. So the constant here is that we're always holding healing bonus on our circlet. If you want to see what happens when we remove healing bonus circlet, then I definitely recommend you to go and watch my live stream because we went into depth there. But anyway, I think you can clearly see that the blue bar, which represents HP percent and hydro damage bonus, deals the most damage. Now this particular graph shows us both non-burst damage and burst damage, and our non-burst damage is lower. But really, if you're going for damage, again, you don't really care about that. So paying attention to these 4 columns right here is what we really care about. Our 3-hit normal attack string and our charge attack deals the most damage. Our E skill does the most damage, but it's not by too much. And then I plotted this same data for when Kokomi is level 80 out of 90, which means she's just Ascension 6 versus Ascension 5. The graph pretty much looks the same way. Nothing really changes, even though we get a little bit of extra hydro damage bonus and a little bit of extra base HP. There isn't any significant changes that would make you want to build a different set of artifact main stats. But now let's take a look at the percent damage difference between these different main stat builds. We're going to go back to the 80-80 because that's where I ran the percent calculations on. So what we're doing here is we're comparing the other 3 main stat builds to the best main stat build. So first, taking a look at the attack percent hydro damage build, our non-burst damage is actually a little bit higher. The red bar represents this, and the percent difference here is actually 25% damage difference, which in terms of percentage is quite a lot, but it's not a lot when you're dealing wet noodle damage. So really, 25% when it comes to non-burst damage is pretty negligible. This is consistent through her charge attack and her E skill damage. Now in terms of burst damage, there's about a 14.36%, let's just call it 14% in her normal attacks, and about 15% in her charge attacks, and then about 9.9% or 10% on her E skill. The skill damage with this main stat combination is also the worst because we're not building any extra HP. And you'll notice that I colored those green because it's actually dealing more damage than the HP percent hydro damage, just to denote that it's a reverse percent difference. The next main stat combination is double HP percent, and I'm going to ignore the non-burst damage from now on because again, we don't really care about it. The damage difference now with her normal attack is 13.4%, her charge attack is 13.1%, and her jellyfish is 14.7%. Now I think the takeaway from this is that if RNG is just being an absolute pain in the ass for you and you cannot get that HP percent and hydro damage bonus set, then running either of these can still kind of work. And also the difference between an attack percent hydro damage versus a double HP percent between just those two is not too great of a difference. It is better to go for double HP percent, but the percent difference here makes it so that your substats is probably going to make the ultimate difference. The last combination that I calculated for is attack percent and HP percent. I think that the difference here is a little bit too great, so I would avoid this one at all costs. There is a 25.4% damage difference in our normal attack burst hits. Our charge attacks is 25.8% and our jellyfish is 23.2%. So this combination, definitely a no-no. Aim for HP percent and hydro damage bonus, but you can settle for the other two. I will quickly show a stacked chart so that you can better visualize what's happening here, but just know that this is not a practical rotation, so it's not 100% accurate, but it still gives you a pretty rough idea on how these different main stat combinations are going to do relative to each other. Okay, now let's move on to the artifact set comparisons. And from this chart, you can see that the 4-piece Heart of Depth set is definitely the best set to go with. Although you can clearly see that it's not that much better. It's not like we're dealing double the amount of damage if we choose 4-piece Heart of Depth over the other ones. The second best is the yellow bar, which is the Heart of Depth and Maiden set. The third one is the Millelith and Maiden set, and then the fourth is the Heart of Depth with the Millelith set. When we ascend Kokomi to her final ascension phase, stats, nothing really changes, although some of the gaps get a little bit closer, but overall, the order of which sets are the best still stays pretty much the same. Here it is as a stacked bar chart so that you can get a more clear visual representation of how well these things do relative to each other. Okay, now let's take a look at percent difference. Just exactly how much better does a 4-piece Heart of Depth do than the other 3 sets? So again, here I'm going to ignore the non-burst damage and just focus on her elemental burst damage. And so firstly, compared to the Millelith and the Maiden set, there is a 5.82% difference. The Millelith and Maiden set was the 3rd best set out of the 4, and that damage difference is really not that much. So really, your substats is probably going to be the ultimate decision maker. Our charge attacks, it's about 7% difference, and then our jellyfish is about 2% difference. Now compared to the Heart of Depth and Maiden set, which was the 2nd best performing set, there's only a 4.43% damage difference with our normal attacks, and 5.81% damage difference with our charge attacks, so that gap is even smaller. Our E skill actually ends up dealing the same amount of damage, and our burst skill damage also does the same amount of damage. So again, right, you really can't go wrong with any of these 3 builds. Definitely go with the one that has better substats. You're looking for attack percent, HP, and energy recharge. The last set was the Heart of Depth with the Millelith set, and this one ends up dealing 8% damage difference with our normal attacks, 7.9%, pretty much 8% with our charged burst attacks, and our jellyfish actually ends up dealing 6.5% more damage with this set. Likewise with the skill damage of activating our elemental burst. There you have it, guys. That's my analysis on KOKOMI'S artifacts, and obviously there's a lot more comparisons that we can actually do. We can switch out the weapon for her signature weapon, and that could definitely change things, although if I were to estimate if it does change things, it's probably going to be very slight, and again, at the end of the day, your substats is probably going to make all the most difference. If you made it this far, then drop a comment down below. I really appreciate the people that stick around to the end, so huge shout outs to you guys, and remember that I do this on Twitch, so definitely head over there if you want to be more closer to the action on when I do this stuff, and don't forget to leave a like on the video if it helped you out. If you're liking this type of content, then even consider subscribing to my channel. After all, it's free and it really helps me out. Alright guys, that's it. Until next time, I will see you guys later.